Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all having a fine day. I'm Ryan Vanilla, and today I'm going to be reviewing the 2022 film Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick is a sequel that takes place over 3 decades after the original 1986's Top Gun. And before I get started with the review, I just want to say that this will have spoilers for Top Gun Maverick as well as the original Top Gun. The first thing I want to talk about in this film is the cinematography. I think it looked really good. There were a lot of sequences and shots that were basically reshoots of the original Top Gun. However, I think these ones looked a lot better, not only because of the technological, advances that have been made in the past 30 years, but also just the shots and the editing were much cleaner and more professional in my opinion. The use of silhouettes in this film was also amazing. You get really beautiful shots like these that bring you into some of the most important moments character-wise for Pete. Like the one where Pete brings a team together to play dogfight football, or when he's about to go on the mission with Rooster and he's nervous because he knows what happened to Goose. I also think the close-up shots in this movie were really good because, well, one, they were really well lit, but they also allowed the actors to show off their talents and really bring life into these characters. Now, Tom Cruise had the lead role in this movie, and don't get me wrong, he did an amazing job, as Tom Cruise, always does. But if you ask me, Glenn Powell and Miles Teller really stole the show with their performances in this film. They really gave it their all throughout the entire film, especially in scenes like the one where Hangman talks about how Maverick was with Rooster's dad when he died, and you can see, just the sly douchiness in on Hangman's face, and you can see the anger on Rooster's face, and you can also just hear those emotions, in their line delivery. On top of how great the film looks, I also really think, the story is pretty good. It follows up with Pete after he's been serving the Navy for 30 years, and now he's a test pilot for new planes. But he's ordered to train a group of Top Gun graduates for a very important and very dangerous bombing mission. The first two scenes really set us up with the two biggest conflicts for Pete, because in the first scene when he's getting ready for his day, sitting at his desk and going to his locker, we see pictures of Goose and young Rooster in his locker, which kind of hint towards his struggles with Rooster throughout the film. And then once Pete gets to work, he is expecting to be doing a test run to get to Mach 9 in a plane. However, he finds out that his program has been scrapped because the Admiral wants to spend the budget on unmanned aircraft. So instead of backing down, he decides to, without permission, take the plane and try to get to Mach 10 to prove that they can do it and to save the budget for his program. So right away at the beginning of the film, we've already seen Pete disobeying orders from upper people in the Navy, which we saw all throughout the original Top Gun and will continue to see throughout this movie. The main struggle for Pete throughout this film is dealing with Rooster, who is one of the pilots who is potentially going to go on this very dangerous mission. And the reason why it is such a struggle for him is because he was Goose's son. And if you haven't seen the first Top Gun, Goose and Maverick were in an accident and Goose ended up dying, and Maverick had to deal with the guilt of, being in the plane and not having been able to do anything about it to possibly save Goose's life. So being faced with the possibility of putting Rooster in a position where he might not make it back alive really brings up some of the old guilt that he felt when Goose died. I think Penny is a great inclusion in this film emotionally for Pete because they do have great chemistry, but also she kind of is an echo for him because she has a daughter, and she tells Pete how she feels like she has to let her daughter make her own mistakes for herself, which, helps Pete realize that he needs to trust Rooster and not just get in his way to try to protect him. I like Rooster's character in this film because he's got a great dynamic with both Pete and his kind of rival character, Hangman. He and Pete have an interesting dynamic because Rooster resents Pete because he pulled his application for the Naval Academy, which set him back 4 years in his career. But, you can kind of see why Pete did it because, one, Rooster's mom made him promise to do it after what happened to Goose. But also, Pete didn't think that Rooster was, mature enough or, I guess, ready to be in the position that he thought he was. And Pete was kind of forced into, well, not forced, he wanted to fill in the role of the father figure that Rooster had lost when Goose died. And then Rooster and Hangman are complete opposites, you know. Hangman's this cocky pilot who thinks only about himself, and he goes at his own speed, which is almost always too fast for others to keep up. And Rooster tends to go much slower because he spends too much time thinking and doesn't really trust his instincts, which is really the main thing that might hold him back from getting the spot on the mission. And throughout the film, when they're doing their training, Hangman seems to be Rooster's biggest competition, but I don't think there's ever really any points where you think either one of them has the advantage or is more likely to be picked for it over the other. Another thing I like about this movie is that it's actually pretty funny. It wasn't like a comedy by any means, but there were quite a few moments that made me and the rest of my theater burst out laughing in the middle of the movie. Like there's a scene at the beginning where Pete walks into the diner after he ejected himself and he's all burnt up in his suit. And he walks in and grabs a glass of water and drinks it. And then he asks where he is, and the kid just stares at him in awe and says, Earth? Or after Pete and Iceman's, conversation about Pete having to let Rooster do his own thing and trust Rooster. And then at the end, Iceman asks who's the better pilot between the two. And Pete says, this is a nice moment. Let's not ruin this. Another moment that stood out to me is when Pete has to jump out of Penny's window so that Amelia doesn't find out that he was there. And he jumps out, gets off the ground, and then she's just staring right at him. None of these jokes are really groundbreakingly creative, but they help bring life to this film. And after seeing this, I really think that the original could have benefited from more comedy. Another one of my favorite things about this film is that a lot of the stunt work was real. There's not, a lot of CGI or whatever like in a Marvel movie. The actors got to fly in actual F-18 jets and do the stunts. Well, they weren't like flying the planes, but they were in them, getting to experience how it feels to be flying it under those circumstances. As well as Tom Cruise got to fly the plane at the end of the movie, the smaller little propeller jet. All the real stunt work along with the great cinematography, the immersive story, interesting characters, the fantastic performances by the actors, and, the mood lightening comedy really added up to like an authentic feeling movie that really came from the heart. It wasn't just a cash grab sequel where they made it just, to make some money and didn't put much effort into it. Like something I can't quite think of. But no, it felt like, a genuine film that everybody who contributed really put in all the effort that they had, and it shows. I forgot to say this while I was recording the review originally, but during some shots, I kind of feel like Tom Cruise looks like Paul Rudd, and Val Kilmer kind of looks like Alec Baldwin doing his Trump impression on SNL. With all that said, I am feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this film. Let me know what you thought of Top Gun Maverick down below, as well as let me know of any other films, new or old, that you want me to review. And it is currently 2 a.m. I have to be up at 7, so I will leave you with that. But I'll see you in the next one, and always remember, stay hydrated.